Good evening, afternoon, morning, night, whenever you find a way to watch or listen to this podcast. It is me, Omar from Hardware, the Burger Popper, as people I guess like to call me due to my Twitter nickname, and just more off-season talk with a couple of the biggest voices in Army football Twitter. I got, of course, old guest Cuthbert of SSN Army, and I got Brendan in Jersey, a new guest, but definitely a vocal voice. Is that a thing? Definitely, I guess, a present voice in Army football Twitter. Both gentlemen I have a lot of respect for, of course. So gentlemen, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me back on. I love the pod and any opportunity to talk about Army content, I'll be first in line. And really excited about this. Brendan is in the mix this time, and I'm really excited. Season can't get here soon enough.
Yeah, we got a lot of substantive talk today. It's off season talk, but it's not without weight. So that's some good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, anytime we have anything to talk about in the off season, for Army football, it's a blessing. I know the AAC schedule is coming out soon. So we'll see. I mean, so people can start planning their game trips throughout the year. But first off, speaking of AAC, in November, Cuthbert and I talked about after the Air Force victory, talked about CIC success and how much that plays into overall success for Army as it joins a conference. I argued that the CIC is still important, but I don't think it would make or break coaches per se. Excuse me, as Army joins a conference and as they play some of the bigger names in the group of five, namely Memphis, who they dodged this year, thankfully, or a former Big East member that's on the rise, like South Florida or USF. So I figured that the CIC is still the most important thing, but it wouldn't make or break coaches per se. That was my argument. Cuthbert has his notes from that podcast, and just to recap a bit, so we can, I guess, get this discussion moving about CIC success.
Yeah. So we had talked back in November following the victory on Air Force. Jeff Munkin, in his post-game press conference, was talking about Nate Woody and the fantastic job that the defense did standing up against that ranked Air Force team. And he had mentioned that Nate Woody he's an option specialist in terms of his defensive prowess. And it got me thinking about, I'm a Kool-Aid drinking fan. The glass is always half full. But will admit I've been a little hot and cold on Nate Woody throughout the years. And so I started thinking, if you overachieve against service academies for the CIC, and then I don't want to say underachieve, but are less effective against sort of general competition, is that sufficient to save your job, because of the importance and the value of the CIC for Army? So I put out some polls on Twitter and Facebook, and I reached out to some super fans that I'm connected with to basically say, would you prefer that Army wins 5 to 7 games a year, an occasional bowl game, always a low bowl game, but we're not winning more than 5 to 7, but we're getting the CIC 2 out of every 3 years? Or would you rather we are winning 8 to 10 games a season, regular double-digit seasons, bigger bowl games, but we're only winning the CIC, say 1 out of 5. And 80% of people who I spoke to and who I polled, and we're talking about several hundred, 80% said they would rather have a 5-7 team that wins the CIC more than an 8 to 10 win team that wins the CIC less. And I thought that was really interesting. I even looked back at, just as a point of reference, at Nate Woody's tenure at Army. So he's been there we have 4 seasons worth of data. Granted, he doesn't have control over the offense. We've seen some significant offensive changes, especially between 22 and 23. But the overall win percentage is about 600, but the CIC win percentage is 750. So we're 6-2 in CIC games since then, 30-19 in games overall, bearing in mind that we're 12-12 in the past 2 years. So, the numbers that I put in these polls are not exactly what we're seeing, but there's similarity there. And I just thought it was a very interesting talking point about if an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator or someone, a member of the coaching staff, how significant the role of the CIC is in their position on the team, because our expectations are a little different at a service academy with the Army Navy game, with a secondary rival, with the CIC. Everything's going to change in 24 as we go into the American, but I just thought it was a very interesting talking point.
So I of course thought this was an interesting hypothetical, and we're talking a lot about fan expectations, program expectations, and you can think back to the '90s when Bob Sutton was able to hold on to his job for a number of years because of his record against Navy, and some people will argue that that wasn't necessarily the greatest thing. Uh, I guess after '96, because I mean '96 is one of the great years in program history. But um, your hypothetical got me thinking as to what the record books say, and the reality is um, there's basically three three distinct periods in CIC play plus 2016 onwards, which I would say is a bit murkier and still being written. It's the story is not yet finished for kind of any side. Well, except maybe Navy. I mean, they're down bad right now, as the kids say. But basically, you have uh, the first 10 years of CIC play, uh, which is essentially uh, the Navy tenure for Omar's guy, George Welsh, right? George Welsh.
Yeah, George Walsh, late 70s, early 80s, that
Yeah.
definitely underrated. Yeah.
So the first 10 years of CIC play, Navy wins 5 out of 10 with three ties, three retains for them, and in that period, they are by far the best service academy in terms of overall record. Um, and then you have Air Force's run from '82 to 2002, where they win 16 out of 21 plus one retain. And again, they are by far the best service academy in that era. I mean, Army has some good years in that period, but they're still down overall in that period, and Navy's down even worse in that period. And then you have Navy's run from '03 to 15, where they win 10 out of 13 CICs. And Air Force is certainly competitive. They're over 500 in that time, but Navy is, again, like a step up, um, and like clear clear cut the best team in that era. And then you have the past 8 seasons where Army has won 4 out of 8 CICs. They've retained once, so nominally they are the dominant team. But um, you could make an argument that Air Force, like, there's actually a pretty clear cut argument that Air Force is the better team. But the fact that they only played half a schedule in 2020, that's part of why the story is still unwritten here. But overall, I mean, um, there's a pretty clear history that if you are the dominant team against other service academies, you are the dominant team of service academies in that same period. So, we'll see if Army can kind of get if Army has another couple of seasons where they're back to like 2017, that kind of level, then I think the story, certainly this period, uh, the history of old continues into the present. But like I said, I do think uh, the picture's a bit murky right now, and it's sort of like um, while like the history is clear, it also kind of gives some credence to Cuthbert's hypothetical of, like especially Army going 6-6 the past couple of years. But I will say, as an Army fan, the fact that 6-6 feels like bottoming out, that's a very different expectation than I remember for the program growing up. As a fan in the 2000s, certainly, where if we won 4 games, it felt like a miracle. So that's really all I wanted to say about that. If you guys have any comments.
So I think like just like about Air Force, I think Air Force's model in the 80s and 90s is sort of like I think what Army should strive for in joining a conference. Um, because like with Air Force, I mean, I can't really think of how many like 10-win seasons they had in the 80s and 90s. I know the great Fisher DeBerry is a college football Hall of Famer, so I would assume it's a lot. But even in like their down years and whatnot, the 7-win years, like they were still, in bowl games, partially because they were the Air Force, and in that day and age, I mean, brand name power had a say in whether you participated in a bowl or not. Before we had, I think, 43 bowls. But even then, like you look at their run in the late 80s and 90s, like no one really talks about the late 80s and early 90s era for Air Force. But I mean, of course, if you look at the Liberty Bowl, the tie-in for the Liberty Bowl was the winner of the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, if they had a winning record, would play in the Liberty Bowl. I mean, I have a commemorative glass I found on eBay with from like a luncheon in the off season, one of those off seasons with like all 3 Service Academy logos. But that being said, I mean, the CIC held weight for bowl season per se. And you had some, I mean, not the greatest Air Force teams playing in the Liberty Bowl, but they won the CIC with like say 7-4 record, with a 7-4 record or so, and they would play a power conference team. In fact, like one of the greatest bowl upsets of all time is, I think it was like the 89 or 90 Liberty Bowl when they beat Ohio State by a couple scores in Memphis. So I think that model, I definitely feel like there's a way for Army to have both, for lack of a better term, to have say a 6 or 7 win team win the CIC and whatnot, and then play in a respectable bowl, whether it be like the Military Bowl where they get a Power Five team, or whether it be the Fenway Bowl by virtue of elimination because there are no other Northeast teams to choose from and they still get a Power Five opponent. I definitely feel like there's a way for Army. I feel like that's like the sweet spot, in my opinion, for Army to have both, really. And I guess maybe it's not through any of their own doing, just by geography and the AAC's bowl tie-ins. But this is definitely an easier AAC to I guess rack up wins and also win the CIC, because as we saw last year, the national opinion of the AAC's kind of declined with them picking Liberty, and their strength of schedule to represent the New Year's Six over a 11-2 SMU team with 2 losses to Power Five teams, including Oklahoma. So that's just my, I guess, final spiel on it, where like I feel like in this era, being in a conference, Army can have both.
Well, you make a really good point, Omar, about the fact that like this is not actually mutually exclusive. This is a fun thought experiment, but Brandon, with the fantastic history, the teams that have been dominating for whatever discrete period you want to put on it in the CIC, those have also been the best service academies in general, and that obviously bears out. That makes total sense. It's just a very interesting sort of thought experiment. Just to go back to what Brandon was saying, it is amazing, as you were saying, that 6-6 and it feels like we're bottoming out, because I know that there's been some not scheduling snafus, but there have been cancellations and there have been contracts broken, and so we've got too many FCS teams and we're not getting into bowl games and blah blah blah. If that hadn't happened and we're going to some low bowl as a 6-6 team, all of a sudden the bottoming out maybe doesn't even feel like bottoming out, even though it does. Our expectations are so high after 17 and 18 and 19 and all those great years, and that's just really refreshing. I always try and keep myself kind of grounded and remember, I remember the dark days. I remember the 0-win seasons, trying to make sure that, guys, if we can be competitive, like, we should be thankful for that. But if we are going to step up into a big boy conference and play big boy games, I mean, again, I drink the Kool-Aid, but I don't think it's impossible for Army to, at some point in the next, say, 6 to 8 years, go undefeated in the AAC and potentially go to the college football playoff. I mean, I think we all know what would happen if they run into an Ohio State or an Alabama or a Georgia buzzsaw in the first round, but it would be incredible. It would be absolutely incredible. I do think that if this current 2016 to present CIC era, as Brandon put it, if Army can continue to win like this, especially if we can kind of pick things back up and get more into the 8 to 10 win seasons and fewer of the 6 and 6s and 5s and 7s. I do think there is potential that Monken could, in my opinion at least, pass Blake as the best. I mean, look, Blake is like Babe Ruth. You know, the game was so different back then. You can't really compare apples to oranges. But in terms of the modern game, you know, if Blake is number 1 in history, Monken's got to be 1A. And if we can get some AAC championships, if we can continue to win the CIC, you know, as at the pace at which he's winning it now, you know, we can get into a playoff. It's like I think there's a real discussion there. And also, you know, I didn't know, Omar, that there was a CIC to bowl tie-in historically. I think that is super cool. I think it's absolutely impossible today. There's too many bowls. There's too many tie-ins. But back when there were fewer bowls and they came at a premium, I think that's something really, really cool. And I would love to see that again. But now that we've got 50 bowls, that's never going to happen again. But just as a point, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, you know, as I mean, I laid out the history. I will say though, I don't really know what the chicken or egg is in terms of Service Academy success. It's like, are you know, it's like, is it because it's like a zero sum recruiting game that, you know, one team is able to rise above the others and be dominant, or is it just like, you know, what it takes as a team to be dominant against other academies? Does that somehow translate into beating other teams on your schedule? I don't know, but I do think we're going to see more success certainly this coming season. You know, I mean, Navy is as bad as they've been the past 4 years. You know, they still managed to go about 500 in AAC play. So I think Army can certainly do at least that, if not better. And yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time. Um, but yeah, I mean, unless you guys have any other thoughts, we can kind of move on to something that's been announced for November this year.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I mean, yeah, that's true. Like, I'm excited for this season. We do avoid the better teams in the conference. So this, I mean, this season there's a lot of optimism, I guess, to say the least. Getting tied up in my words here, but I guess the big news this week, like Brendan said, Army Notre Dame. You know, hence my get up today. You know, got the Stars and Stripes on Yankee hat, and you know, I mean, not so much the accurate jersey, but you know, the mid 2000s jersey. But yeah, Notre Dame Navy. I guess, is there anything you guys want to put out there that hasn't been said about this? I think for me, which I'm drafting an article for As for Football on whether this game gets the primetime treatment, because I mean, usually the Shamrock Series is a primetime game. But there are some kind of hurdles, and I guess not involving Army, that I guess have to be leaped over. But I mean, I guess, yeah, I guess your guys' takeaways, anything that you think hasn't been already said about this, about the 100th, the centennial of, I'm just gonna say, the most iconic, most well-known piece of sports literature in American, yeah, in American history.
Um, I I'm really excited about this game. Not because of what the game looked like the last time we played them, but because I think this absolutely could be a primetime spot. Um, you were just saying a minute ago, Omar, that Army has, I mean, based on the 2023 records, a pretty favorable first schedule in the AAC. You know, obviously Air Force is always going to be a question. just because it's a service academy. ECU, East Carolina, they've got a transfer from Michigan State at quarterback in Hauser. So, and they look like they might be on the rise. Rice has had 3 of its strongest recruiting classes ever in the past 5 years. They're probably on the come up, but UTSA, Frank Harris, super senior rebuild. So, I think that could easily be a win. Dilfer's got a great culture at UAB, but it's still a young team. I mean, it's theoretical that Army could be undefeated or like a 1-loss team going into this, because they will not have played Navy yet. So we don't have to worry about that in terms of like a win-loss. I mean, if Army is undefeated going into this game, they could very easily be ranked. Not super high, but if they're 7-0 or 8-0, they could be at, whatever, in the 20s, let's say, ranked. Notre Dame, they could, the big games they have coming into this: Texas A&M, Purdue, Louisville, and Florida State. So they could be a 3-loss team, or they could be a 1-loss team. And if this is a number 23 ranked Army against a number 9 or 12 ranked Notre Dame, this is 100% getting, all the spotlight. It's getting the prime time. I don't know if that necessarily means we have a better shot at winning, but just that I think this has the potential to be an absolutely huge game. And thinking back to what Cody Worley drew up against Coastal Carolina, my brain is now thinking to myself, we are going undefeated this year. We are beating Notre Dame in Yankee Stadium. We're taking the CIC. We're winning the AAC. We're going to the playoff. And I just need to kind of throttle back on that a little bit. But I'm really, really excited for this game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too many other thoughts other than shout out to Sal for reporting this back in 2021. I think he had it on Black Knight Nation, Army Notre Dame at Yankee Stadium in 2024. Um, unless I don't know, does it uh unless anybody has any other thoughts on the game. I mean, I'm excited. I don't know if I'm gonna go. Um, I've been to the new Yankee Stadium 4 times. Only once was for a baseball game. It was 2 other football games and a hockey game that I've been to, and one of them was Army Notre Dame in 2010, where I had like the worst headache ever, and it didn't help because there was like a loud speaker like literally like right behind me up in the nosebleeds. But anyway, um so this is something else I did a deep dive research on, uh you know waiting for this game to finally be officially announced, because as I said, Sal had reported it for a long time, and it was I think like Notre Dame had put it up on some schedule over the off season. So a lot, like, I mean, all there were a lot of signs pointing to this game finally getting announced. But I was curious. Um, I was curious with this game getting added, how many common opponents Army and Navy would share this year, and this is an all-time high of 6 common opponents in a season between Army and Navy. You've got the 4 in the AAC, which I don't remember offhand, plus Air Force and Notre Dame, and then plus playing each other. Um, as I said, I'm excited this year about being in the AAC, but at the same time, there's going to be a level of gamesmanship, and this is going to be, I think, a new normal. Being in the AAC with Navy, that you have maybe not 6 common opponents, but certainly 4 or 5 consistently every year, and how those teams kind of enter the schedule, before the other opponents. I think it's, I mean, like we already know how crazy the Army Navy coaches are relative to each other in terms of like what they want the other academy to see on film throughout the season. So I mean, this is just adds like another multiple layer to the rivalry throughout the season. And I think as I think I said this on Sal's podcast before. I can't imagine that the AAC would ever intentionally schedule somebody against Army and Navy back to back, but at the same time, scheduling is a difficult thing, and sometimes you just, like sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you just have to do that. So I'll be curious to see if anybody gets stuck with Army and Navy in back to back weeks, or at least back to back games, maybe with a bye week in between. But yeah, just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. You mentioned like the whole gamesmanship, I guess the common opponents, and like I think about the mid 2000s. Like I wonder, I guess or not even mid 2000s, even farther back, like when both are independent playing mostly Eastern schedules. I mean, it's kind of crazy, I guess, that there never was that sort of common, I guess, overlap, I guess, in terms of opponents. But honestly, I kind of like wonder like what I guess there is to do. I mean, short of like, giving everything to like win a game, I guess maybe Army would hold back against, say, if both teams had Temple, which it looks like Temple's gonna be a yearly game for both schools. Of course, Navy, it's their designated rival. Which I guess would mean that our designated rival is Tulsa, because Tulsa doesn't have a rival. But that being said, like yeah, like I kind of wonder, like, maybe Navy holds back against Temple, because Temple is one of the worst teams in AAC generally, or that means that Army holds back against maybe like a Tulsa who had a tough year last year, like a Rice, well, not Rice, but a Tulsa last year. I kind of wonder if that like might be a trend we see, but in the end, it's like gamesmanship aside, like Army Navy is like the biggest game of the year, of course, but it's like I feel like you have to do what you can in terms of like just winning the game in front of you, like no matter what it takes, like game plan wise. So that's an interesting point. But like for me, like my imagination as to like what the coaches could do. I mean, I'm not a coach, is kind of fried. So like I don't even know like how they would approach this problem.
Well, and it's an interesting point that Brandon made about potentially there being an opponent seeing one service academy and then like a week later seeing the other. And I think that probably works against the opponent in terms of, say, their defense, who's going to be eating up potentially more snaps than usual 2 games in a row. But by the same token, if you play Navy one week and you've got Army the following week, well, you're going from, and again, I don't know, I can't speak to the exact differences between the single wing, the triple option, the flex bone, the hex bone, you know what I mean? But let's just say the option for now as a general category. If you're seeing an option team 2 weeks in a row, that may actually give your defense a little more of an edge against that second team, because now it's like, okay, well, we worked on it for a week and then we saw it, and now we're going to work on it for another week and we're going to see it again. Not that Army and Navy's offenses are identical, but that there's a lot of shared concepts there relative to, like, I don't know, if you're playing Oregon, let's say. So it would be very interesting to see how that would play out if you're like Omar, you mentioned South Florida. They're definitely coming up, and um, if they were to, I mean, they mopped the floor with Navy last year, but let's say they play again in 2025, it's a little bit of a closer game, and then the following week they have to take on Army. That's a very interesting implication for what that game might entail. And like you said, in terms of gamesmanship and making sure you're not tipping your hand or showing too much, I I know that all colleges do this, all coaches at the highest level do this, but you run that fullback dive the exact same way every single week, and you do it so that when you're playing your biggest rival, you can set up for that. Except instead of the dive, it's the whatever, it's the read option or the play action or something like that. And the fact that they're going to be seeing the same teams, I think that there very well may be some people on one staff who go, well, when Navy played against North Texas, they did a lot of runs like this that seemed to be very effective. So we are going to lean into that. So it's definitely a new wrinkle that I think is really, really cool. I'm, generally speaking, actually really excited to be joining a conference. So
Oh, I guess I'll add one more thing to that in terms of the gamesmanship. I guess like thinking about like how there won't be any more times where Army's got 2 bye weeks before Navy. I mean, it's just not possible, not doable. Which I think it's interesting from a scheme perspective because in times with Navy, I remember vividly, even still, I mean, vignettes of like Navy pulling out I formation. You know, when Keenan Reynolds was there, pulling out I formation with their double bye week. And even when, you know, when Ahmad Bradshaw was the starting quarterback, like in 2017, in the snow, like Army ran an almost exclusively shotgun quarterback dive offense with their double bye week. Excuse me, with their double bye week that they had available to them. So like I kind of wonder what wrinkles, like if we're gonna see less wrinkles in the offense for those games with only 1 bye week. And sometimes if Army is in the American title game with no bye week at all, um, which we saw in 2016, like that had an effect on Navy, not just injury wise, but um they try to put in these new wrinkles, but I don't think Zach Abe was comfortable with running a full house pistol offense with 2 slot backs and a fullback that they ran heavily that game. So just something that I thought about too, just now.
I do think your mentioning of the 2016 game, I've always been a believer that the fact that Navy went to the AAC championship that year was instrumental in our breaking the streak. And I don't say that to take anything away from our staff or the men who played in that game, but you know, every little bit helps, especially against Navy when it just seems like it's a game of inches almost every single year. Um, and you know, as I sit here and talk about, oh, we're going to be undefeated and we're going to win the championship and all this stuff, what does that mean for the Army Navy game? I don't know. Um, is it possible? Because you know, bowl games get selected after championship weekend. They don't get selected after Army Navy. So is it possible for, let's say, Army to go undefeated or be one loss, win the AAC championship, you know, get into a bowl game that's high level, big payout, etc. It's like, and then they're tired and they're beat up and they don't have time to prepare and they go in and they get, and Navy squeezes one out. I mean, that's absolutely possible. And I think it's, I don't know. I mean, I would hate to see it, but those are the wrinkles that make college football so great.
All right, Brandon, if you don't have anything to add, I guess, on this topic, I guess before we move on to our final topic, and do you have anything to add?
Not really. I'll just say in terms of, you know, Army Navy in 2016, there were some other games during the streak where, you know, some much poorer Army teams, you know, almost pulled the upset against, you know, a much better Navy team. Uh, 2015, just the year before, I think Army was 2-9 and Navy was 9-2 going in, and Army was starting a true freshman quarterback in what is his second appearance of the season, something like that, and they almost pulled it out. You know, 2012, of course, you know, there's the fumble. Um, 2011, I think, was another close one. So, um, you know, generally speaking, the better team the better team coming into the game has won the past 20 years or so. But you know, there's of course room for the occasional upset, and you know, frankly, after, you know, 14 losses in a row, I don't really care that, you know, Navy had lost the, the conference title game.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's just crazy to think that like on one play, like two of Navy's biggest performers, like that I mean, it's just crazy to think of like that place is still vividly in my head where both like Will Worth and I think Deshaun Romine or Tonio Gully, one of their slot backs, you know, were taken out on one play. Crazy to think of. But I mean, I guess, you know, with that in mind, 2016 AAC title game in mind, it's cool that the storylines. I think that's probably the best storylines we've had in any Group of Five conference championship game was that one because you had Navy gunning for their first national or first conference championship with a chance at the New Year's Six, and then Temple ultimately winning the conference that kicked them out. You know, of course, it looked a lot different than when they were kicked out, but technically, it's still a conference that kicked them out. So with our final topic, I know we want to talk a little bit transfer portal stuff and coach turnaround. So yeah, I'll let you guys take the baton on this one because I'm not as well versed in the transfer portal. I don't really follow it in terms of coaching staff turnover. There hasn't really been much aside from a couple of big moves, but yeah, just what are your guys' thoughts on the various moves?
Uh, so I think first of all, it's sort of like the most important thing is that Cody Worley has been promoted to offensive coordinator, um, replacing Drew Thatcher, but Drew Thatcher remains on the staff. Um, I believe he's now the tight ends coach, even though they have another guy at H backs coach. I don't know how that works, but
Yeah,
I
I found just real quick. I found last night Drew Thatcher, depending on where you're looking, is listed as the H backs coach, but we also have Blake Powers as the running backs coach. I don't really know how that
oh
breakdown
yeah,
works.
and then somebody else recently was hired as the tight ends coach.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's right. But I guess the cynical take is that they're not going to get rid of Thatcher because he's on a contract or whatever. I choose to believe that Monken just wants to keep around as many bright football minds as he can, even if they have a less sexy title or less responsibility ultimately in running the offense. I have to imagine um, there's you know I guess well certainly since Brent Davis moved on, I have to imagine like the offensive staff has been kind of a brain trust, with sort of like one guy in the league calling the plays on Saturdays. But I mean, I'm all about having as much creativity in the room, even if you don't necessarily use it down in and down out. I still believe that the um, the Thatcher kind of crack seam passing game. I still think there's a way to make that work in the flex bone. Even if he was running it out of the shotgun at Nebraska Kearney, and then certainly last year at Army as well. I do think there's something there, and I think maybe Monken sees that as well. They just didn't quite make it work last season, but they put some time in on it, and maybe if they put in a little more time on it, they can make it more successful. But yeah, bit of the usual coaching shakeup, but not as much as we've seen the past few years, which hopefully will give us some continuity. Well, I mean, other than the fact that they look to be going back to more of an under center offense this year. I guess I guess the Coastal Carolina game last year was quite eye opening for them. Me really, I don't care if I don't care if it's under center, shotgun, pistol, whatever. If it works, it works. Whatever it takes to win. But yeah, I think that's all we need to mention about the coaching staff.
No, I agree 100% with you, Brandon. If it works, go with it. I actually really enjoyed the shotgun. I mean, I didn't enjoy going 6-6, but I actually really enjoyed the shotgun. I think you're 100% right that Monken is too thoughtful and too deliberate in his decision making, and I think that that someone like Thatcher, right? He's brought on. He's the co-OC. It doesn't pan out quite the way they want. I don't think it's he's on contract deal. I absolutely think that it's Monken going, we need more ideas. And they might not be ideas that we're relying on all the time, but it's a new facet that we can utilize when we need to. Even Drinkle, though, he was co-OC and offensive line last year. He's back to the O line this year. When he was running his own team at what was it, Wesleyan, I think, or I can't remember where.
Yeah, the
It
something like Kansas Wesleyan, but yeah, I mean he plucked him out of NAIA ball.
Yeah, and he wasn't running an under center offense. He was running like a high yardage, you know what I mean, like a almost like a fun and gun. I mean, Monken understands the value of diverse opinions and schemes, and so I think that he's built a good team. People have been rearranged. I think, look, you watched that Coastal Carolina game last year, and it's like, oh boy, not too hot, not too cold, just right. And granted, Coastal wasn't expecting us to go under center, so they weren't prepared for it. So of course everything looked better, but the play selection was just right. It was muscle memory for a lot of those guys. It was fantastic. So I'm 100% on board with putting the offense into Worley's hands, and I'm 110% on board keeping Drinkle, keeping Thatcher, making sure that we have those diverse opinions because, like you said, oh, hey, guys, by the way, we got Navy coming up. Are we going to add a wrinkle? Oh, yeah, let's bring in the guy who specializes in the shotgun. Let's bring in some different ideas so that we can execute much more broadly. And I will just say one last point on this, on a somewhat personal level, just sort of seeing and interacting with both Thatcher and Drinkle a little bit online and reading interviews with them. They both seem to be really good cultural fits for the school and the mission of the school and the mission of the team and the idea of we don't have a QB1, we have a QB room, which is very unusual, and things like that. And the idea of like, if we succeed as a team, then we all succeed as individuals. It's not I need to succeed as an individual. I think they both culturally fit, Monken's system, the team, the academy, top to bottom, and I think that alone is really, really valuable.
That's a great point too. I mean, just about that culture. You mentioned the QB room, which like I got to see firsthand as a first in 2020, just that whole robust quarterback room. I mean, right down to Maurice Ballon having a first down, a rush for a first down that sealed the game against Citadel in 2020. Like 5 or 6 quarterbacks, I lose count, but all those guys that saw action. I mean, so it's a really good point about the cultural fit and everything, and I think a lot of culture gets kind of lost, I guess, in this day where like we think about scheme, we think about players, we think we think about when it comes to coaching staff who can recruit the best, who can get guys from the portal the best. When we forget about culture really too, and I think that sets apart the academies from the rest of college football, just that emphasis on culture, and whatnot. That being said, mentioning the transfer portal, not really a lot of big moves. I think the two that strike me the most are, of course, Isaiah Alston, which I'm going to mention, I guess, in a few seconds, and Champ Harris, which I wish Champ Harris all the best. It just looked like that he never was a great fit for the offense. Just looking at his rush numbers, he only had 9 net rushing yards. Of course, sacks are accounted for. And really, the only time he looked comfortable running the ball was I guess the Massachusetts game, the UMass game, where he had that long run for a touchdown. But wish him all the best. Looking back, I'm glad that Monken put him in the final seconds of Army Air Force, so we can have piece of that history of Army's first win over AP ranked foe since '72, since the Nixon administration. So, but wish him the best. But I do think that he will find a better fit in another more conventional offense. And of course, the big one, Isaiah Alston, as I alluded to before, and he is a more interesting case. Champ Harris being a freshman, Isaiah Alston being a fourth-year junior, meaning that from a cadet standpoint, he would have signed his affirmation. He would have affirmed to dedicate the next 7 years of his life to the military and the military academy to a lesser extent. Meaning that if he were to leave the academy for any reason that was aside from, I guess, health or, circumstances that were not his fault, he would have to pay a 6-figure sum for his education accumulated at that point. But he's still transferred, and there is no animosity towards Isaiah Austin. I wish everyone the best in their path on life. But for me, I kind of think like from a perspective of being a cadet before, where I'm not making that decision unless someone has money to cover me, which leads me to believe that I think Isaiah Olsen was tampered with. Of course, he hasn't. I don't think he's committed yet. I haven't checked On3 or a 24/7, the sites that keep up endlessly with the transfer portal, but I kind of want to say that he might have been tampered with to some degree to like make that decision. But I guess I want to know your guys' thoughts on, I guess, Champ Harris leaving, any other portal options I missed, or the Alston situation?
I'm pretty sure Alston committed to Iowa State, but I might be wrong.
I mean, per his Twitter, he did. I mean, I don't know how official
Yeah.
anything is, but
Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess they got some big booster. I guess Cyclone Larry. I don't know if you guys are follow Cyclone Larry on Twitter. I guess Cyclone Larry paid him off. But yeah, I mean, I wish him the best, but I mean, Big 12 team, Big 12 school. Um, yeah, I figured there is, I guess, a group or collective of boosters wouldn't have a problem paying off the I guess his education, if not this year, I guess the next year as well, like accumulate it over time. But I guess your thoughts are just on just the transfer portal losses as well.
it actually looks like so. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of the transfer portal, but poking around, obviously the biggest loss is going to be Alston. He's been our leading receiver, and if he hasn't been the leading receiver, he has the potential to be the leading receiver. I think he probably looked around at the college landscape, realized that his talent is outsized for Army. I have no ill will towards him. You go, you do you. Whether how that's working out with his commitment and the paperwork and all that, it's none of my business. He's committed to Iowa State per his Twitter. It's Power Five team. I don't know if there's an NIL deal. There's potential to go pro. I mean, he's a really, really good star. Obviously has Power Five talent and ability. Generally speaking, I actually don't think we were hurt too badly this year in the transfer portal. Obviously, we're losing him. We lost Tana Latuli, who's going to go to San Diego State. And I know that we had a coach who left, maybe not this year, but last year, and went to San Diego State. And I can't think of his name right now, but there may be a connection there. Latuli, he was a backup, but he was backing up Fortner most of the time, who was a captain. And but he was a plebe who had lots of real game time experience. So it's not as though this is really going to hurt us this upcoming year. Probably more likely it would be hurting us in a hypothetical 25, 26 as he continues to develop. But I wish him well. Champ Harris on the way out. That's tough to see. He did seem to be the sort of heir apparent. But with the new offense under Worley, maybe he wouldn't be. So, that's another guy that's sort of is it a huge loss for next year, or is that more down the road? I mean, right now on the active roster or on the listed roster of the team, we have one senior, one junior, and one sophomore quarterback, and that's it. So, the way that Army runs their team, everyone's getting shifted around. And the next thing you know, Noah Short's going to be playing quarterback. I don't know. Also, it was reported this past week or maybe last week by shout out to our buddy Sal at Black Knight Nation that Hayden Reed is no longer on the team. I don't think it's a transfer portal deal. I just think he's not on the team anymore. That one is too bad because I think he really could have been a big offensive weapon for the next year or two or three, however many. I think he's got 2 more years left at the academy. With the rise of Kanye Udo this year, Reed was getting a little less playing time, a little, not as many touches. I don't want to imply that he's like got hurt feelings or something. Who knows why he's not on the team anymore? It's not my business. I do know that he was a burgeoning running back, a burgeoning skill player, and that's another one that I think is going to hurt us. Maybe not necessarily in 2024, but absolutely could in 25 and 26 and on down the road. So, who knows how this works out? Champ Harris has entered the transfer portal. From what all accounts I can find online, he hasn't found a home. Maybe we have a Tyrell Robinson situation where he gets in the portal and comes back out. Who knows? The same could be true with Hayden Reed. If he's still at the school, he's still at the academy, he's just not on the team anymore. Well, this year we saw Alex Meredith come back. Unfortunately, he got re-injured, but we saw Alex Meredith come back after taking 2 years off. So the glass is always half full. And, maybe we get these guys back and maybe we don't. I still wish him well.
Yeah, I think for me, the transfer portal, it's like it's this new thing, and it's it kind of in I would say in Army's case, it sounds like it sounds more important than it is, because to me in Army there's always a high level of attrition on the team, whether it's uh, guys who leave before the end of their sophomore year or whatever it is, or guys who leave the team to focus on Army stuff. God bless them. Or guys who just can't handle the academy for whatever reasons. Like, there's always been a high level of attrition. In Olson's case, like, would I rather have him on the team? Of course I would, but I think there's always a temptation to sort of focus on like shiny objects, and Alston was definitely a shiny object in this offense. But I think one of the key differences between Army's overall team approach compared to Navy's is that Army under Monken has never really been that concerned with the shiny objects of the world. It's much more, as we say, it's not QB1, it's a QB room. It's there, and I think that builds in a much more of a next man up, better be ready mentality than what they have in Navy, where it's like, oh my gosh, like we have two guys hurt now, like the season's over, or I'm sure Navy fans have been pulling their hair out since oh man, what's his name? Who's the senior in 2019, their
Malcolm
quarterback,
Perry.
Malcolm Perry. They're just like, where are we going to find the next Malcolm Perry? It's like, honestly, you guys may never find him again. And meanwhile, Army is just chugging along, and it's one of the things I love and respect about the program. But yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think Navy is switching to that. I guess like more team mentality was from the quarterback position because I mean they start a lot of guys at quarterback really too. Last year, and I mean they have like a bright future with their QB room. Um, that too. I mean they still have two guys returning, but I think they might have. I can't say they took a page out of their book, but out of like necessity and I guess various moments last year, they had to kind of take that more team centered approach. I guess I wouldn't even say it was like team centered, just like more so by committee approach. But yeah, like I mean, wish all the guys in the portal the best. Hayden Reed was one I missed. I know he had a 100-yard game against UTSA. That one that's definitely a huge loss for sure. But yeah, I mean, wish him the best. But I think that's all we had scheduled for our outline. Do you guys have anything final to add? I'll let you guys take this time to plug your various platforms before
I
we sign off.
I thought of one more thing, and I'm not even gonna say his name because he makes me so angry. But um, I really wish that congressman from Wisconsin had not gone and messed with the pro player policy, because sorry, because not only West Point but the Army as a whole could be getting a lot more at no cost advertising from now two-time Super Bowl champion Cole Christensen. And the fact that they just can't figure that out, that it's a good thing overall, especially when military recruiting overall is at or near all-time lows. Like, I get it, guys. You have a hard time seeing the benefit of things that aren't necessarily military, but there's such things as, whether it be lost leaders in running a grocery store or whatever you want to call it. um yeah, it just it just it grinds my gears that they can't seem to settle on this. And I really wish somebody would step in and you know make uh make the policy favorable to the athletes at all the service academies for whatever pro sport you know uh options they might have down the road. It just drives me nuts that we can't figure this out, and I I hope somebody can come in and change the policy for the better for the for the permanent.
Seconded.
Yeah, I mean, I will say Cole Christensen, former I4 I-beam, he was in my cadet company. I was in his cadet company since he graduated before me. Um, but yeah, I always tell people this story when it comes to Cole Christensen. I tried to get an Army Navy game program signed by my brother, and he was happy to do so at formation, but neither of us had a Sharpie, and then I couldn't track him down before he left for the 2018 Armed Forces Bowl. So my brother could have had a program signed by a two-time Super Bowl champion, if not for my own ineptitude. But that enough with that. It's just a fun story I tell. But yeah, like I mean, I think it's great too, and I also think it's neat when guys like Malcolm Perry, of Navy, when he had his a couple 2 year stint in the pros, he decided that it was time for him to start his naval career. So I think it's cool when guys step away and then they reach the heights of American sport, and then they serve their country afterwards as well. So I think that's great too. But I don't have anything else to add, gentlemen. Anything, like I said, anything you guys want to, excuse me, plug before we head off on this podcast?
I would just say make sure to like and subscribe to the Hardware Pod wherever podcasts are found. And thank you so much, man. This was a blast, Omar. I always enjoy talking with you and Brandon. Hopefully, this is the first of many.
Yeah, this was fun. I do appreciate people following me on Twitter and all that for my army takes, but do understand that I'm also not necessarily for everyone, and I will post whatever I want about whatever topic. So just fair warning. And and if you're a crazy Navy fan, I'm just not going to engage with you at all. Um, but I will say in terms of plugging things, I hope to be back as a pre-show, occasional pre-show DJ at the oh my gosh, can't even think straight. Um, the Mahoning Drive-In Theater in Lehighton, Pennsylvania. Our drive-in season runs from the end of April to the end of October. So if you're in the area, come check us out. It's all retro programming, as much stuff on film as possible. If you're into that kind of thing, there's there's usually a weekend or two that can suit anybody's taste. So come check us out, and maybe you'll see me there.
It's great because I've never seen a local business plugged on my podcasts. I mean, I guess if you live in that area and you're listening, I know I try to cater to various different programs and tastes in college football, but if you're in the Mahoning area, then absolutely spin by Brendan's
It's
Drive.
it's right next to Jim Thorpe. If you know Jim Thorpe, PA, it's right next door.
Oh wow, Jim Thorpe was one of my favorite athletes as a kid. And so yeah, like what a coincidence. He still is one of my favorite athletes. But yeah, I think that's a great coincidence. And yeah, if you're near Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, tune in and also read more about Jim Thorpe. Yeah, just stop by Britain's Drive-In. But until next time, everyone, thank you, gentlemen, for taking time on an early Friday morning, early for me, more so than you guys on the Eastern Seaboard. But thank you again, guys, and thank you everyone for tuning in. I guess tune in soon for some content with me and Jackson, some off-season content. I know he's busy with work and just life and everything. But until next time, everyone, I'm the Burger Popper, and peace on soul.